Shane Beamer's been building this South Carolina program. It hasn't always been smooth, but he has been preaching patience, even with Spencer Rattler and some of the pieces they had last year, knowing that a big moment is coming where the trajectory of this program can go from knocking at the door to finally bursting through it. And this weekend, in the beautiful college town of Columbia, South Carolina, against a proud LSU team that's talented, with game day on campus and all eyes on the Gamecocks, is that moment. With a young, phenomenal quarterback that took his team on the road in SEC play and came away with a dominant win, the question now isn't can South Carolina actually do it, it's can they show the consistency to do it again and again and again. The South Carolina family has been starving for this. They have been yearning for it. And from personal experience, Williams-Brice Stadium is going to be absolutely electric this weekend. The Towels could cause gale force winds, the fans will hit decibels you can't find in an opera house, and the stage will be set for the biggest game in Columbia, really since Beamer beamed into the place. That's a proud program. We know how proud LSU is. To the players and the coaches for South Carolina, your time is right now. The waiting is over. Bar the door, batten down the hatches, and for those that are squeamish, look away, because the opportunity to change your trajectory is at hand. And this game's going to be a fist fight, make no mistake. Will the Gamecocks emerge from the depths and announce that they are finally here, or will LSU once again show that the opening game was a minor slip-up in a major turnaround? David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback, my brother, former Western State Colorado wide receiver, Blaine Crain. Guys, when you look at this game, and I do want to say the weather, at least right now, I mean, we know how it can change, is supposed to be pretty bad on Saturday from a rain, precipitation standpoint. You know, I'm not Jim Cantori. I don't know the best way to explain that, which I think favors South Carolina. But after what you saw, because I want to stick, David, on the Gamecocks for a second, against Kentucky last week, it wasn't pretty. Offensively, it wasn't really that on time. Lenora Sellers was creative, and they were able to hit some big plays during the scramble drill. Do you think that said more about South Carolina or the ineptitude of Kentucky on offense? Because these South Carolina fans want to know, hey, where are we at? After week one against Old Dominion looked clunky. Week two wasn't pretty, but you dominated, looked good on defense, as bad as Kentucky did on offense. How are you feeling about South Carolina?
Man, that's a really good question. I think a little bit of both. I don't think Kentucky's a good football team, but still, South Carolina went on the road and dominated them. So, look, that's all you want for Shane Beamer right now. And I think this is a great moment for Shane Beamer to go in that locker room and tell his players, look, you can get immediate rewards when you go and handle your business. A lot of people didn't think that we could go on the road, beat Kentucky. We did that, and guess what? College game day is now going to come here 7 days after that. They're going to come here for the first time in 10 years. If you do your job, you can get immediate rewards. So, yes, this is South Carolina's big moment. You want to punch above your weight again when LSU comes to town, who I do think is a good football team. Now, that's going to really get the nation's attention. Lenora Sellers, you're talking about the Kentucky game. Man, live arm.
He's got tools.
Accurate playmaking ability. There's a couple passes per game. I think he's a young kid. He's going to put the ball in harm's way. So two things I'm looking for this football game. Can LSU's defense turn him over? Right, he's going to make some plays, but can they get him to have one of those errant throws? We saw the overthrow against Kentucky that was an interception. Can LSU do that a time or two? And then on LSU's offense, their rushing attack. They only rushed for 63 yards against Nicholls State. I feel like they got to rush for more than that against South Carolina to be able to win the football game, to be able to do everything they want, especially if what you're saying is true about the weather.
Yeah, and Blaine, the running game is always key. But in this game, it's massive, right? Especially if the weather's bad, to bring that back up again. But if you're South Carolina, the best way to protect your young quarterback is to be able to run the ball. Not just because it gives you another element offensively, but it slows down the defensive line for play action. Because if I got to respect the run, right, I've got to make sure I do my job. It gives me that extra step, or makes me hold up on that extra step, which gives Lenoris a little bit more time to be able to operate and go through. I think sometimes people don't realize how much a run game helps in pass pro for the offensive line and the quarterback because of that versatility, and not just on play action when it's 2nd and 5, right, or it's 3rd and 4, those in-between downs where you don't know. But when you look at this LSU team, we have watched this movie before. This game, to me, don't forget, and I know Jaden Daniels and Nussmeier and this LSU team are different, right, but we've seen them make these adjustments. A couple years ago, I watched them not push the ball down the field in the first game against Florida State. really play conservative in the pass game. Then when they went to Mississippi State, it was bombs over Baghdad down the field. Now, if the weather is good, right, I think you got to do it either way. But if the weather is good, do you think LSU is going to push the ball down the field to really put some pressure on the South Carolina offense to have to play catch up and put LaNorris in situations where he's got to go get it early?
Yeah, I think they have to. I don't think Brian Kelly can afford not to. I think the fans are calling to push the ball down the field, and that's who LSU is. The couple things I'm looking at when it comes to this game, I think the battle from the offensive line from LSU and the defensive line from South Carolina is going to be a hell of a watch. I mean, we talk about Dylan Stewart enough on this show. You go back and watch some of that tape against the Kentucky game, the guy's unblockable. I mean, they're putting 3 guys.
He's one of the best freshman defensive linemen I've seen in a long. And why does South Carolina always have that one? Mm-hmm. They get it more than anybody.
But it's not just him. This South Carolina defense is for real. They have cats running around in the secondary that can roll with these LSU guys. And I think the big key, and you brought it up, weather is going to play a huge part in this game. Because if South Carolina could just run the football, eat that clock, and win the possessions in the red zone and actually score 7 points, South Carolina's defense is good enough to run with LSU because LSU hadn't proven it to me yet. Go back to that McNeese game. That was an underwhelming performance from LSU.
Nichols,
excuse me. You won 42-21. That's not good enough. Mm-hmm. And I know you lost to USC, and we're all impressed with the defense. USC's for real on offense, but they have to put it together to beat this South Carolina team because now South Carolina has what? They got hope, right? They got hope. And when Williams-Brice Stadium has hope, buddy, that's a tough out.
Yeah.
That's not just a walk in the park. So I would be very cautious for all LSU fans if you think you're just going to come in here and just walk these guys. They got athletes and cats running on both sides of the ball.
And LSU, it seems like, loses a defensive lineman every week. They lost another one this week, I believe, for the year. He may have towards Achilles. I can't remember exactly the injury. But LSU, that was one of the things this offseason in the transfer portal where LSU fans are worried. I mean, even talking with Moscona when we had him on through the transfer portal, that front seven, that defensive line, they felt pretty decent about the starters, but they didn't love the depth that they had, and you keep having to go to the bottom of the barrel. Eventually, as talented as LSU is and the guys they bring in, it's going to catch you. I would be very surprised if South Carolina, one of the weird ways or the ways that would shock me the most is if South Carolina won a game that was in the 30s. I think for South Carolina to win this game, it probably needs to be low 20s, mid-20s probably at the highest, because, again, I feel like LSU, and they do have to prove it, Blaine, you're exactly right, it's a new group. Once they get going, they have the guys that can really get going.
For sure.
I don't think South Carolina offensively at the skill position. Love Nicholas Harbor, right? But as far as the versatility, I know they got McDowell, some other guys, but I don't know if they have enough to be able to win a track meet even at home. So again, for the 9th time, going back to the weather, if you're a South Carolina fan, I think you're rooting on rain. I think you're rooting on rain and wind. Because if this game can be and it's weird saying this about this LSU team, and all offseason, we talked about it here. All I heard was how good this offensive line was going to be. Will Campbell's out here talking about, we're going to go dominate. We're not going to Caesar's Palace. We're going to a fist fight. Well, they ran for what, 60 yards, you said?
60. I said 63. It was actually 68.
Oh, 68 against Nichols? That ain't good enough. And this is a game that LSU fans looked on the schedule before the season and said, man, you always want to play your easiest games on the road in conference. This is one we can get early. South Carolina's probably not going to be that good, which nobody's saying South Carolina's elite. But now, if I'm an LSU fan, I'm starting to get a little bit more worried about this could be a season derailer.
A lot of questions.
David.
Quickly, how much does Dylan Stewart weigh? Do you know?
God, he looks like he's about, what, 225?
I don't even know.
He looks like he could be 270.
He looks like he's going to put 40 pounds on that frame.
Oh, he'll be a first-round pick. He'll be a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
He's listed at 6'6", 250.
250?
He wears 250, which means he's probably 240.
Yeah.
All right, 245, and wears it like that.
Yeah, he'll put 25 on in the next year alone.
He's a freak.
Anyway, back to the game quickly. Okay, so if the weather's going to be that bad, which, look, we got to track this thing all week, because I was feeling good about the over initially. I mean, with LSU giving up 21 points to Nichols, like what Blaine was talking about, and I think LaNorris Sellers is going to make plays. If it ends up being a monsoon, it's just an ugly game, and both teams have to run more than they traditionally would. You're saying it benefits South Carolina. I can get behind that. There's just a part of me that wonders, well, even if it's raining, can they run the ball well enough? Or is there better chance just to have Lenore Sellers freak out and make some huge
Well, I think you're going to see some QB run.
So
I think that may be a little bit of a difference between.
Okay.
That's another advantage I think South Carolina has. Not that Nuss is a paraplegic or he can't run. He ain't running like that cat, and he's not nearly as big. I saw Nuss at SEC Media Days. He's not a big guy. Like Lenore is a pretty big guy. So if it comes down to we got to fight this one out in the phone booth with the losses that LSU's had on the defensive line, with knowing South Carolina's trying to cobble together offensively a down the field pass game. Because, again, their big plays were on scramble drills, right? Not saying that can't work against LSU. I've seen it work against LSU damn near more than anybody else the past couple years. You can't rely on that, though. Like, that's not we're going to call the play, and I actually kind of hope it breaks down. You can't stay on schedule that way, and you don't want Lenoris to learn that way, right? It's hard to teach a kid to ride a bike with one training wheel, right? You don't need to learn how to BMX first. You need to learn how to just ride the bicycle on the road. So, again, I think it would be an advantage when you look at the weather. We want to know what you think. Hit that subscribe button. Going to get to the chat.
All right, chat, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. If you donate, it's on topic. It will get read. We're going to start the day off with Jay Soul. What's up, brother? He says, if South Carolina slows down the clock and makes the plays, then it's going to be upset Saturday again, boys. Go Cox.
Well, I would say, I think most people would agree, if you take your fandom out of it, which is hard, that LSU, even though they still have to prove something, has a better overall roster than South Carolina still. Not by leaps and bounds, but the longer that South Carolina at home, in that environment, with all the buildup, can stay in the game, the better chance you have to win. I know that is obvious, but something else I think you're not going to hear on any other show is that sometimes with young guys, when game day comes into town and all this hype is there, we hear this all the time with freshmen. They don't know they're not supposed to play good. They don't realize that they're not, some older guys will be like, all right, I'm hyped. Here we go. This is my opportunity. Lenoris and them probably just going to go out there and play. Play free. I mean, it can be an advantage. Overall, having young guys all around is a disadvantage because of experience. But sometimes in these moments, with all this hoopla, they're just going to go out there and do what they've been doing. So I actually think that's going to be advantage South Carolina because Nussmeier's been waiting on this. He watched Jaden Daniels when game day would show up, go nuts, and he's been waiting his turn and waiting his turn and waiting his turn, and now is his time, right? On game day, grew up, son of a coach, watched it every day. I'm sure Lenoris did too, but Lenoris is in high school, right, not too long ago. Right, he hasn't had all this time to be like, oh man, he's just going to go out there and play, dog. And that's a weapon in its own.
All right, let's go to Jay Smooth. He says, how big of a piece can Nicholas Harbor be in this game? He hasn't really been getting the looks lately.
Well, two things are going to happen with Nicholas. Either he's going to make game-breaking plays or he's going to be a hell of a decoy. Sometimes it's a little bit of both, especially if they hit you early. Make no mistake, LSU understands who he is. They understand what he can do, better than just about anybody probably. But the art of the decoy can sometimes be even more devastating than having the guy go off a little bit. So they're going to have a plan. They're going to try and get him the ball, right? They're going to do things. Shane understands who his playmakers are. But if LSU says, you know what, we're going to have to devote two guys to this guy, or we're going to have to funnel resources to take away from him, that's going to open up something else. And Shane and them are smart enough to realize, well, we're going to take advantage of that. So it can be one of two things or both. That's what I'm interested in.
So how much RPO are you expecting from South Carolina?
I think it depends on the weather.
Okay.
Because
so
if I'm going to sit
monsoons.
So if it is pouring rain, and I'm not talking about drizzling or raining a little bit with no wind. If it is raining, if it's sheets of rain, I'm not going to sit here and ask my quarterback to have the opportunity to pull the ball, give the ball, pull it, and throw it. I'm going to make it pretty simple. You're a young guy. We're either going to hand this son of a gun off. The craziest thing we're going to do is play action and boot off of it.
Yeah.
That's it. So I think a lot of it depends on the weather, but you train for all of it, right? You go through all of it and have all of it in and then decide on game day because, only one person knows what the weather's really going to be like on Saturday. What's up, YouTube? Hey, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. We'd really, really appreciate it. If you already have, you guys are the best. Make sure you hit that like button as well and keep spreading the word. It's a long season, right? We're basically just on first down. Hell, honestly, we're really still in warm-ups.